In this video, we'll explore 4 catastrophic events that nearly led to the extinction of the human race. But since you're watching this, rest assured, we're still here. Unfortunately, I'm Al-Mukana, and let's begin. The Black Death, 14th century. By the 14th century, the world was relatively stable. Europe was expanding, markets were thriving, and cities were growing. But in 1347, everything changed. The plague originated in Central Asia, near Lake Issyk-Kul, in what is now Kyrgyzstan. According to scientific evidence, the cause was the Yersinia pestis bacterium. However, the bacteria had existed long before. It was the unsanitary conditions in Europe that enabled it to spread rapidly among humans. When merchant ships arrived in Italy in 1347, the plague spread like wildfire, reaching France, Spain, England, Germany, and even Scandinavia within a month. It resembled a zombie apocalypse, infecting cities at an unimaginable pace. Why was it called the Black Death? The symptoms were horrifying: intense fever, severe body pain, and most notably, the appearance of black boils across the body. These symptoms almost always led to death within days. With no real medical solutions, people sought explanations. Some believed the plague was divine punishment for humanity's sins, leading to extreme religious movements like the Flagellants, who publicly whipped themselves in repentance. Others blamed Jewish communities, falsely accusing them of poisoning wells. People fled cities, abandoning their loved ones, while those who couldn't escape barricaded themselves inside their homes, turning them into prisons. Yet the plague followed them wherever they went, acting like a grim reaper. By 1351, the epidemic finally began to subside, but not before claiming the lives of 75 to 200 million people. Around 60% of Europe's population. However, was the Black Death entirely bad? Surprisingly, it had unintended consequences. The drastic population decline led to labor shortages, which in turn gave rise to the middle class. Before the plague, Europe was divided between impoverished peasants and wealthy nobles. But the demand for workers forced better wages and social mobility. In a twisted sense, the plague was nature's way of resetting an imbalanced society. Yet this wasn't the last time humanity faced near extinction. That brings us to the second catastrophe: the Spanish flu of 1918. The Spanish flu, 1918 to 1919. As the world began recovering from World War I, an invisible enemy emerged, one deadlier than the war itself. The first cases appeared in the spring of 1918 at Camp Funston, a US military base in Kansas. Initially, the symptoms resembled a common cold: fever, cough, and fatigue. But the disease evolved rapidly, turning into a nightmare. With soldiers traveling by trains and ships across Europe, the virus spread uncontrollably. By summer, it had reached every corner of the world, from Europe to Asia and Africa. Once again, medical infrastructure was completely unprepared. There were no antibiotics or vaccines, and treatments were limited to rest and herbal remedies, none of which were effective. Within a year, the flu infected 500 million people, 1/3 of the global population, and killed between 50 to 100 million. But the real horror? Unlike most diseases, which mainly affect children and the elderly, this flu targeted young, healthy adults aged 20 to 40. Why? Because of a phenomenon called cytokine storms, an overreaction of the immune system that destroyed lung tissue, leading to death. Essentially, the stronger a person's immune system, the higher their risk of dying. The pandemic eventually faded, though the exact reason remains unknown. Some theories suggest partial immunity developed within the population. Regardless, the world we know today might not exist if not for this deadly flu. But not all extinction threats were natural. Some were entirely man-made. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. In 1962, humanity was one step away from complete nuclear annihilation. After World War II, the world was divided into two rival camps, the United States and its allies versus the Soviet Union and its allies. The Cold War was essentially a race to build the most powerful nuclear arsenal. In 1959, an event in the Caribbean changed everything. Fidel Castro overthrew Cuba's US-backed government and established a communist regime supported by the Soviet Union. Cuba instantly became a geopolitical hotspot. In 1961, the US attempted a failed invasion known as the Bay of Pigs, further pushing Cuba towards Soviet influence. Then, in October 1962, American spy planes captured images of Soviet missile launch sites in Cuba. These missiles could carry nuclear warheads capable of reaching US cities in minutes. When President John F. Kennedy saw the photos, he faced a nightmare dilemma. 1. Launch airstrikes to destroy the missiles. 2. Invade Cuba. 3. Impose a naval blockade to prevent more weapons from arriving. Each option carried the risk of triggering global nuclear war. Kennedy chose a blockade. As Soviet ships approached Cuba, the US Navy prepared for battle. At the last moment, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev ordered them to turn back. Through secret negotiations, Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles if the US WAF promised not to invade Cuba, and East secretly withdrew its own missiles from Turkey. The crisis ended without war, but it highlighted a terrifying reality. Nuclear weapons could destroy civilization in an instant. This brings us to the final catastrophe, the Chernobyl disaster. Chernobyl nuclear disaster, 1986. On April 26, 1986, the world witnessed the worst nuclear disaster in history. During the 1970s, the Soviet Union built the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Despite multiple safety concerns, as expected, the government ignored them. On the night of April 25, 1986, engineers conducted a safety test to see if the reactor could function without external power. A series of critical errors led to an uncontrollable reaction. At thumb 1:23 a.m., the reactor exploded. The blast was so powerful that hundreds of tons of radioactive material were ejected into the atmosphere. Firefighters rushed to the scene, unaware of the radiation exposure. Many died within days. The nearby city of Pripyat continued daily life for hours, with no warning about the catastrophe unfolding. Eventually, authorities ordered a mass evacuation. To contain the disaster, thousands of workers built a concrete sarcophagus around the reactor. Decades later, a new structure, the safe confinement, was built over it. One of the most infamous remnants of the meltdown is the Elephant's Foot, a deadly formation of radioactive lava inside the reactor. Even today, it remains lethal to humans. Final thoughts. These events prove one thing: humanity is fragile. Every time we've faced extinction, fate has intervened. Why haven't we been wiped out yet? Simply put, because God hasn't allowed it. So, here's my question to you. Since you're alive right now, standing on this vast earth, what will you do before your own time runs out? Think about it. See you in the next video.